At that, we had our stream software drop out, so we are resuming now with part 2 of Pilot Bootcamp Week 2. Right now we're talking about structure for hour-long shows. So it's going to be all the same beats as in half hour, and no matter the size of your story, the beats are pretty much going to look the same. But the numbers do look pretty different, because we're playing in twice as big of a field, right? What have I not gotten to on here? I know I just gave a quick description of each of the beats here. I want to maybe just pause for questions and see, does anyone feel like there's one section of, or especially if you have some experience with this before, is there one section of this that you are still trying to get your head around or understand? Or is there one section you want to know more about before I continue with the slideshow? Hope you guys can all read this okay on our Discord stream.
Hello, Connor.
Hi.
Will you explain Stinger again? What is meant by that?
Yeah, Stinger is it's either going to play out during the credits or after the credits. And it's in half hour, or I should say in comedy, it's usually going to kind of be just like the characters hanging out and having fun, or maybe like we're paying off a joke from earlier, or it's just sort of like we finished the plot and now we just want to relax for a minute, so this is going to be like the fan favorite characters just hanging out in a show like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Community. This is just going to be like, the fan favorite characters doing something funny. And if your show actually has more that is coming in the following weeks, like there's more story track that we need to go down, i.e. you're doing a premise-based show. So usually, most comedy shows are not premise-based. Occasionally they are. But if your show has a story with, things to come next week, it's a good place to hint at what's coming next week. So think of, in your superhero show, after we beat the villain that we were fighting this week, but then in the Stinger, we watch him go back to his boss, and he's like, hey, boss, I was beat up by Awesome Man. And now his boss is like, uh-oh, we better put the Evil League together. And then we understand, okay, next week, we're going to have to deal with the Evil League. So it's a great point. It's a great spot to either just have fun and pay off things from before, or to set up things for next week and to capitalize on the threads that you've left strategically hanging. Because this is a big part of TV writing, especially premise writing, premise pilot writing, is that you can't resolve every conflict. You have to leave some things open. So the Stinger is a good place to kind of tell us where they're going or where they would go if this would be a show. Does that clear that up? Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Connor.
Sure. Other questions on structure? Okay, so I would definitely write all these beats down on your sketchbooks, and even in class today you can start brainstorming what these would look like, and I'll show you a filled out one. So actually this is scene cards. Do I have the story beats? Let me bring up a different example document. I have one for a feature, but they look the same. Okay, so this is what this looks like for me. So this is our story beats summary. And I have each section overhead, like, here, let me move out of the way. Each section at the top has the page numbers that it will take place on. We just have a couple bullet points, which are going to be the scenes. So when you first make this list of just all the structural moments, then you won't have everything, but you should just fill out what you have, and then you can work back and forwards from what you have to kind of fill out the rest of the episode. So as you can see, some of these moments are going to be a series of scenes. Like the intro is a sequence from pages 1 to 10 of a feature. Don't worry about the numbers here. But then the catalyst is just one thing happening. Catalyst should not be a series of events. A catalyst is one event that then causes something else to happen, that causes something else to happen. So don't make a big list of things for the catalyst. Other things that should just be one moment. The act breaks. Act breaks are just one clear, crystal clear moment. Midpoint is one crystal clear moment. It is not a series of scenes. All is lost is one very clear moment, not a series of scenes. I think that's it. So most of these are going to be sequences, but a few of them, there should just be one thing listed for. Try not to overload us with, overload your plot points with too many things happening. Just try to get right to the point, be really simple and concise, and if you don't know how else to write out a scene, think of who is the main character and what are they trying to do? Do they accomplish it or don't they? Okay, so that's what Story Beat Summary looks like. And everyone fully understand what to do for next week? You're going to be filling out your Story Beat Summary with a series of bullet points for the different scenes. You don't have to have every single one, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and it can be subject to change, but you're going to fill this out as thoroughly as you can. And I would recommend 1 to 3 pages for this. As you can see, I do about 3 pages for a feature, so if you're writing half-hour show, 1 page would certainly be fine. If you're writing hour-long show, 2 pages max is probably fine. Everyone get what to do for next week? Cool. Feel free to type a question if you have one into the chat. But let's proceed. Let me check the stream chat as well. Oh, this is just the second part of our broadcast. Okay, yep. All right, let's proceed here, and let's look at our next couple slides with some more tips and guidance on structure. Maybe I will, let me see which of these I want to start with. Let me go into this slide, actually. I think this is probably going to be one of the more useful ones. I will get into each of the structural beats in more detail. I mean, we have half an hour left, and I thought we'd be doing more feedback today, so we do have time to explain this in more detail. I will say the floor is still open if you guys have pilot or series log lines that you want to get feedback on, and I'd recommend doing that, or revised versions of your previous ones. Would really recommend it. But let's look at this first, because this will be a great thing to just, if you have a log line, you can start kind of outlining, because you already know where a couple things are going to be on this outline, or you know where in the story certain things will fall just because of the format and template that we use. It really acts as a nice bridge to your story beats from the log line. So let's look at this. Okay, so a good log line gives you a head start on the outlining process, because what does the template look like? When or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. So that tells us a bunch of things right off the bat. We have inciting incident. That is your, also known as the catalyst. I call them completely interchangeably. Those are the same thing. But the catalyst goes, we know where that goes, don't we? In a half-hour pilot, that's going to be around page 5. In an hour-long pilot, that's going to be a page, 7 or 8, a little later in the first act. The numbers themselves are less important than just getting the shape of the story right. So don't worry way too much if your numbers are starting to drift off. This takes a lot of practice to get really good at this. But on your outline, it is helpful to know you could just put that on your story beats outline for around page 7 or 8. We already know where that goes. An adjective protagonist is going to describe your character in the intro section, which for your hour long is going to be, pages 1 through 6 or 7. For a half hour, 1 through 4 perhaps. We have to do it a little bit quicker in half hour. You have a little longer to do your character's normal world in a full hour. But you guys can see how we can just start to slot these things in. Must conflict, when we say must conflict, then we can look at your character's Act 2 goal or obstacle. So the premise scenes, that is what should be described, or the premise scenes should be exploring the main conflict that you've laid out for us. And then we can ask these other questions like, what is the worst possible outcome that your hero could imagine? That is usually going to be the all is lost moment. So if we look at what their goal is, then most often the all is lost is going to be they fail at their goal, or it seems as if they are now on the verge of failing, or that failing the goal is inevitable, or the goal is no longer possible. So if the goal was I need to win this big fight I have coming up, then the all is lost moment might be, oh, your main character, while he's on the way to the fight, he twists his ankle. So now there's no way he can win the fight. Or it might be something like, we find out the bad guy is cheating and has brought a knife to the fight. Oh, no. How are we possibly going to beat him now? And your main character runs away or gives up, or their mentor leaves them, or they have a breakup or a fight with their friend. The all is lost moment is going to take the stakes that you've laid out for us, and it's going to take what your main character cares about, and we're going to essentially hit them with the worst possible thing they could imagine. And we know that where that goes if we look at our outline here. All is lost around page 40, 42 for the 60-minute pilot. And, it's either going to be your second act, the break at the end of your second act, or around page, 22 to 24 of the half-hour pilot. And then the worst outcome that I like to say that we are building from the all is lost moment, which is the worst thing your character can imagine. And then we are pushing from there into the pit of despair, which is the worst thing that we can imagine. So the worst thing that can actually possibly happen. So if the all is lost is we get in a fight and you break up with your girlfriend or boyfriend. Now this is, you're both wallowing and you're sad and alone by yourselves, and you realize you really missed them. You shouldn't have broken up. Oh, this is the worst idea ever. You're eating the big ice cream in your room by yourself and crying while you watch reruns of The Office on Netflix. This is where you are wallowing in the shame and the defeat of the all is lost moment. And it's basically things getting as bad as they really can be, or your character realizing the cost of the consequences that have led them to here. Okay, so I hope this helps a little bit. I know this is a lot. If this is new to you and you're newer at structure and things, this can sound like an overwhelming number of terms and numbers and all these complicated things. So I want to just keep the floor open, of course, for questions on these things. Does this make sense how we can take our logline and extrapolate our first 4 or 5 story beats from it? Everyone feels like they can do this for their own pilot, because if you have a little time to do this now, you could easily just take what you have on your logline and list out your first couple story beats. Lee says, cool to think about the difference between the worst thing the character can imagine versus the worst the writer can imagine. Yeah, that's just a fun way of thinking of it, because usually we want to make it seem like the worst possible thing has happened, and then things do get worse. And that's only really possible if the character's conception of how bad things can get is not actually how bad they really can be. Kim SZ11 says, oh, has a series login for us. Sure, we can look at that. I'll read that one out. Or do you want to read that out for us, Kim? You said no, you don't want to read it out. You don't want feedback on it? Oh, no problem. It sounds fine right now, but I can read it out short. Okay, so series logline. The detective... Wait, hang on. Move this. Oop. Okay. The detective Teddy solves crimes with his short-tempered assistant, Kimberly, while he tries to protect his girlfriend from his vindictive ex-wife and her powerful brother. Okay, what genre of show is this? Is this a procedural, or a comedy, or a drama, or a thriller? What is this? He's killing his wife?
Yeah, the antagonist kills his wife. And tried to put down the comedy, and he says, going her through a meat grinder is just not funny for most people.
Oh, well, you can definitely do a dark comedy, you for sure, if that is how you see this, and that is an important part of the tone of the show. You definitely can. But I just want to make sure I understand. So is this a crime procedural where there's going to be like a crime of the week?
Oh yeah, crime of the week.
It is. Okay. So a detective solves crimes with his short-tempered assistant while he tries to protect his girlfriend from his vindictive ex-wife and her. When you say her powerful brother, what does that mean? Like he has a lot of influence?
Oh no, that means he's a cop.
He's a cop.
Pretty high rank.
Okay, I would say that. I would be more specific in the logline and say that. And so the ex-wife and her brother are trying to do what exactly?
No, the ex-wife just wants to hurt his girlfriend, and the brother wants to keep her from going to jail.
Okay, so they're trying to like ruin her life basically? Or trying to kill her?
They're just trying to ruin her life, and that's where the comedy comes in, and she's also pretty naive too.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I was just wondering how these things relate to each other. Like, is his career at all related to what's going on with his family dynamic that's happening here, or the conflict that's going on with his ex?
Career isn't related.
It's not related.
Two separate things.
So that's what's making this not feel very cohesive to me, I guess. It's like the fact that this almost sounds like two different shows, whereas I think that you can make this feel like the same show. Especially if you frame it a little differently, if you frame it a little bit more like, this is a comedic crime mystery show where because you're sort of saying this is like a crime of the week show, but with a subplot, like with a recurring subplot that has to do with the main character's ex. So I'm just not seeing how these things are linked. So maybe they are linked. Maybe you can think of, is his ex like his old partner or something like that? Can we just like bring these two worlds together a little bit more? Because otherwise it just feels like two different main ideas to me. So I would maybe start bringing the relationships into his career a little bit. Go ahead.